Bhakti Yoga Retreat. What's that?
On the cloud.
On the cloud. Record on the cloud. That's the request from Ramachandra. Thank you. Okay. Hare Krishna. I'm glad to be with everyone here. All right, so let's read from some Bhagavad Gita as it is. Let's read from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness. And let's read text 5. Text 5, chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita as it is. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading text 5 of chapter 13, Bhagavad Gita as it is. We can start with the Sanskrit words responsively. Rishibi,
Rishibi,
Bahuda,
Bahuda,
Gitam,
Gitam,
Chandobi,
Chandobi,
Vividai,
Vividai,
Pritak,
Ritak,
Brahma Sutra,
Brahma Sutra,
Padai,
Padai,
Cha,
Cha,
Eva,
Eva,
Etu Madbi,
Etu Mahadvi,
Vinishchitai,
Nishchitai,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Chandobir Vividai Pritak,
Chandovir Vividai Pritak,
Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Rama Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Etu Madbir Vinishchitai,
Etumat Vir Vinishchitai,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Chandobir Vividai Pritak,
Chanavir Vividai Pritak,
Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Rama Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Etu Madbir Vinishchitai,
Etumat Vir Vinishchitai,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Chandobir Vividai Pritak,
Chanavir Vividai Pritak,
Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Rama Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Etu Madbir Vinishchitai,
Etumat Vir Vinishchitai, Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Chandravir Vividai Pritak,
Chandobir Vividai Pritak,
Rama Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva,
Etumat Vir Vinishchitai,
Etu Madbir Vinishchitai.
Rishivir Bahuda Gitam,
Rishibir Bahuda Gitam,
Chandovir Vividhai Pritak,
Pritak,
Brahma Sutra Padaschaiva,
Sutra Padaisha
Hetumad Vinishchitai
Chitai
Rishivir Bahuda Gitam
Rishir Bahuda Gitam
Chandovir Vividai Pritak
Dandavir Vidai Pritak
Brahma Sutra Padai Shaiva
Brahma Sutra Padaisha
Etumadvir Vinishchitai.
Hetumad Vinishchitai. Anyone else like to recite the verse? We'll go to the word for word, responsively. Rishivi,
Rishivri.
by the wise sages.
By the wise sages.
Bahuda,
Bahuda.
in many ways.
In many ways.
Gitam,
Gitam.
described.
Described.
Chandobi,
Chandoghi.
Vedic hymns.
Vedic hymns.
Vividai,
Vividhai.
in various.
In various.
Pritak,
Pritak.
variously.
Variously.
Brahma Sutra,
Brahma Sutra.
the Vedanta.
Vedanta.
Padai,
Padai.
aphorism.
Aphorism.
Cha,
Cham.
also.
Also.
Eva,
Eva.
certainly.
Certainly.
Hetumadbi,
Hetumad be.
with cause and effect.
With cause and effect.
Vinishchitai,
Nishchitai.
ascertain.
Ascertain.
Translation. This knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings, especially in the Vedanta Sutra, and is presented with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the highest authority in explaining this knowledge. Still, as a matter of course, learned scholars and standard authorities always give evidence from previous authorities. Krishna is explaining this most controversial point regarding the duality and non-duality of the soul and the supersoul by referring to scriptures, the Vedanta, which are accepted as authority. First, he says, this is according to different sages. As far as the sages are concerned, besides himself, Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedanta Sutra, is a great sage. And in the Vedanta Sutra, duality is perfectly explained. And Vyasadeva's father, Parashara, was also a great sage, and he writes in his books of religiosity, Aham tvam cha atanye. We, you, I, and various other living entities are all transcendental, although in material bodies. Now we are fallen into the ways of the three modes of material nature according to our different karma. As such, some are in higher levels and some are in the lower nature. The higher and lower natures exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the supersoul, which is infallible, is uncontaminated by the three qualities of nature and is transcendental. Similarly, in the original Vedas, a distinction between the soul, the supersoul, and the body is made, especially in the Katha Upanishad. There is a manifestation of the Supreme Lord's energy known as Annamaya, by which one depends simply upon food for existence. This is a materialistic realization of the Supreme. Then there is Pranamaya. This means that after realizing the Supreme Absolute Truth in foodstuff, one can realize the Absolute Truth in the living symptoms or life forms. In Jnanamaya, the living symptom develops to the point of thinking, feeling, and willing. Then there is Brahman realization and the realization called Vijnanamaya, by which the living entity's mind and life symptoms are distinguished from the living entity himself. The next and supreme stage is Anandamaya, realization of the all-blissful nature. Thus, there are 5 stages of Brahman realization, which is called Brahma Pucham. Out of these, the first 3, Anamoy, Pranamoy, and Jnanamoy, involve the fields of activities of the living entities. Transcendental to all these fields of activities is the Supreme Lord, who is called Anandamaya. In the Vedanta Sutra also, the Supreme is called Anandamayo Vyasat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is by nature full of joy, and to enjoy his transcendental bliss, he expands into Vijnanamoy, Pranamoy, Gyanamoy, and Anamoy. In this field of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, and different from him is the Anandamoy. That means that if the living entity decides to enjoy in dovetailing himself with the Anandamoy, then he becomes perfect. This is the real picture of the Supreme Lord as supreme knower of the field, the living entity as subordinate knower, and the nature of the field of activities. Hare Krishna. Om Gyan Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Putale Svayam Upakadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gura Shri Yota Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Puritana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pitan Sagnalalita Shri Vishakan Vitamstra Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurage Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Panchakalpate Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Niti Namine, Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 13, entitled Nature, the Enjoyer, and Consciousness, text 5. Rishibir Bahuda Gitam Chandobir Vividai Prita Brahma Sutra Padaischaiva Hitumadbir Vinishchitai. That knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings, especially in the Vedanta Sutra, and is presented with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Hare Krishna. And so it is said that knowledge is power, and knowledge or intelligence means the capacity to make distinctions, right? Whether it's in playing a musical instrument like mridanga or kartals, yes, when to do kita. I don't know everything. I don't know the distinctions, that's why. It's rare that I get asked to play mridanga or kartals or things like that. Or in cooking, or in medicine, or in parenting. It's all about making distinctions. It is sometimes said, it's sometimes said by a parent that treats all of their children equally by treating them differently. I mean, equal, yeah, with equal care and equal protection. And realizing the distinctions between each person. So just in this one, Bhagavad Gita is all about making distinctions. That's why it's so powerful. And so this one verse has many, many distinctions. We'll maybe get to a small fraction of them in our class and discussion here. So, and Prabhupada talks about this, Vyasadeva says at the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, the highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. So some distinctions here are, okay, so 3 important ones are The self, that's us, the spirit soul, that atomic unit of sentience that animates the body, as we sometimes point out. We can say the body's alive only because the soul's inside, right? Once the soul leaves, then we want to bury it or throw it in the ocean or burn it. But actually the body's already dead, just like the car, the vehicle is already dead, but it appears alive to when the driver's inside. Like if an alien from a different planet were looking, they might think there's these living entities called Toyota and Renault and Volkswagen and Mercedes. But no, and there's these living entities called Chevrolet and Dodge, but then there's these parasites, these little human parasites that try to suck the energy of the living entities. But actually the vehicle is dead, but it appears alive when the driver's inside. So the driver, that's the atomic spirit soul. This is hugely important because, who am I? This is a clear question. So this is who we are. We're that atomic spirit soul. Now, so we're all atomic spirit souls and we're all unique. Just like some analogies, just like, there's unlimited trillions of snowflakes and each one is, has some unique shape, but they're all made of H2O. So a spirit soul, Ananda Myopia, such Ananda Vigra, we're all eternal, blissful, spiritual personalities. We're distinct individuals. Okay, so there's the distinction right in this verse. So Krishna says, that knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities. So we are the knower. We're the Kshetra Gyan. So we're the knower. Then there's the field. We just recently completed a 3-day online seminar, which was impressively, very inspiringly transformational, and at the same time had profound philosophical substance. And so we use this term, the material context. So the field of activities, the kshetra, that's the human context or the material context. Okay. And then there's the knower of the field. There's kshetra, and then gya, like the Greek gnosis, the English word to know comes from the Sanskrit gya or jnana. Okay. So the spirit soul is the knower of the field, just like the driver of the car is the knower of the car. The driver of the car knows, yes, here's the turn signal, here's the brake, like that. So the spirit soul is the knower of the field. So that's a key distinction. To the extent that we, as spirit soul, misidentify our identity with material body, then it is a sure guarantee we will be living in anxiety and insecurity. It's the root cause of all fear, anxiety, and that whole constellation of emotion that relates to fear. Stress and strain and worry and like that. The root cause, there are so many, it can expand into trillions of different dramas and subsidiary causes, but the root cause, misidentification of spirit self with material body, misidentification of spirit with matter, root cause of all fear and anxiety. Okay, so the context, the material context, a form of that is the body, the home we live in, the car, the whole society, the economic conditions. This is all expansions of the bodily context. Okay, and so we are the spirit soul. And then another distinction emphasized in this chapter, for example, in the 3rd verse of chapter 13. Kshetragyam chapi mamudi sarvakshetreshu bharata kshetrakshetyanam gayor yatat gyanam latam mama. That Bhagavad Gita makes it very clear. Okay, so there's the field and the knower of the field, the body and the soul. And then there's another knower. There's another knower in every body. Actually, there's another knower in every atom. But there's what's called the super soul. Super soul is it's an expansion of God. sitting right next to us in our heart. An expansion of Krishna called Paramatma. So the soul is the Atma. In Sanskrit, sometimes Atma can refer to the body, the mind, but in this context, the soul is the Atma, and Para means supreme. Para, above, supreme. And so sitting right next to us, inside the body, in the region of the heart, is an expansion of God called Supersoul. Suridam Sarvadehina, Ketramam Shantimichiti. So that's our true best friend, and we can be true friends to each other. So it's a true friendship is supporting each other to connect with that highest guidance within. That's the Supersoul. So that's an important distinction. So we are not God. We are servants of God. The soul is a servant of the Supersoul. Now there's other aspect. Now the Supersoul is an expansion of Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That the Bhagavan conception, which is even higher than the Supersoul conception, is not so much emphasized in this particular verse. It's certainly emphasized in Bhagavad Gita. So the Supersoul, the Paramatma, that's like the feature of Krishna, the feature of God, that's particularly facilitating. Particularly the supreme facilitator within the material realm. Okay? Just like however foolish we are, species after species, birth, death, old age, disease, however much we are dedicated to alienating ourselves from ourselves, the Supersoul is following us and always lovingly giving us wise guidance. Upadasana mantra bharta bhakta bhakta maheshwara paramatmeti chapyukto desving pusha pura. The Supersoul is the overseer and permitter. So two functions, if we can reduce it to that. So the Supersoul, so it's important. So there's matter, body, there's the matter, there's soul, and there's Supersoul. Important distinctions here for genuine conscious living, for genuine spiritual life. So the Supersoul facilitates our desires. Okay? And to the extent that we're desiring materially, the Supersoul is facilitating our desires through the material energy. And if we desire spiritually, Supersoul is facilitating our desires through spiritual energy. The Supersoul is always wanting us to turn to our core original nature, Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sajjit Kabunai Shravanare Shuddhachete Aryayuda. What that means is love of God, love of Krishna is eternally situated in the hearts of all living entities. And it's awakened by the process of kirtan, Shravanam Kirtan, hearing and chanting about the glories of God. That's how that natural love is awakened. So the Supersoul is always giving us guidance to turn towards our true bliss, our true highest interest, which is pure devotional service to the Supersoul, to God. At the same time, there's no force. Once there's force, there's no love. Krishna speaks the entire Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and right towards the end, he says, Yate chasita taku. He says, now you may do as you wish to do. Krishna's not saying, I don't care what you do. Krishna really wants Arjuna to choose wisely as his friend, as is true for him. But there's no force. Love means a voluntary exchange of service and affection between two conscious entities. And so God, Krishna, will not take away our free will. But then, just like if we create a robot that at programmed intervals says, David, I love you, you're great, you're wonderful, you're just great. It won't be that satisfying because I know, well, I just programmed the robot to do that. But if other people spontaneously are inspired to appreciate me and to exchange with me and to share themselves with me and to really want to understand me, then that's rewarding. So that whole propensity for exchange of affection, love, and understanding, well, that's because we're parts and parcels of the Supreme. We're parts and parcels of Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, Personality of Godhead. So that starts in Krishna. Okay, so our choice essentially related to this verse, is to try to take shelter in the kshetra, in the field of activities, in the different elements of the human context, to try to take shelter in the material conceptions of society, friendship, and love, to try to take shelter in material, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Try to take shelter in, basically, in this whole samsara cycle of janma mrityu jara vyadi, birth, death, old age, disease, trying to find fulfillment, all those qualities that we're seeking: fulfillment, peace, security, vitality, joy, playfulness, inner peace, strength, power, beauty, to try to find it in dead matter, in the material context. And that's pretty much the choice that practically all of us in material conditioned existence are making at each moment. And that's futile. That's shrama eva hi kevala, useless waste of time. Or worse than useless, like it really causes the degradation of the soul. Because we can say useless, like, oh, that was useless, okay. But it's like severely painful. It becomes a suicidal despair in some circumstances. Because it's just empty. It's the string of zeros without the one in front. Our other choice is to take shelter in the super soul, in that other knower of the field. We take shelter in the super soul, and then all the disturbances of the material context, and this is a key point. I just quoted on Friday at the beginning of the seminar, M. Scott Peck at the beginning of his book, The Road Less Traveled. His first sentences are, life is difficult. Well, it's difficult now, but I'm going to fix it. So as long as we think that way, M. Scott Peck, he was a psychiatrist. So he said that's the root cause of all neuroses and psychoses. I'm going to arrange life so it's not difficult. Once it's not difficult, I'll breathe easy. And he goes, okay, then you're a mental case, guaranteed. Life is difficult. That's the context. We don't want to die. And we're going to die. Well, actually, we're not going to die. The body will die. That's why we said, to the extent that we misidentify the eternal self with the temporary body, we're going to be in anxiety, severe anxiety. Research has clearly indicated the death rate remains steady at 100%. Yes. Studies have confirmed. So, right. So that's a difficulty. We don't want to grow old, right? We don't want to become diseased, but and we can see. So if we're thinking, well, they're going to find a vaccination for this current disease, and then we'll be free. No, but here's the thing: medical science has, in its miraculous power, has found cures and vaccinations for many diseases that are now practically eradicated. Smallpox, diphtheria. They've eradicated disease. They've eradicated so many diseases. So does that mean that there's no disease? No. Does that mean there's even less disease? No. These are just definitely not. Definitely not. Definitely not. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't search for vaccinations and annihilations. It doesn't mean we shouldn't take care of ourselves to live a healthy lifestyle and be clean to minimize disease and take care of ourselves nicely when there's some symptoms. For sure, take care of all that. Accepting that this is the context of disease, old age, and death. This is the context. And this is the context of disturbances coming from our body and mind, disturbances coming from other people, other species, mosquitoes. It is sometimes said that there are innumerable living entities in the universe, and most of them have taken birth as bugs in Florida. Yes. It's in the Vedas somewhere. It's there somewhere. So okay. So this is the context, and we resist resisting reality is always a losing battle. Resisting reality is always a losing battle. So taking shelter of the supersoul means we're no longer disturbed by the context. As M. Scott Peck said, life is difficult. Accept that life is difficult. Then it doesn't matter that life is difficult, because then we're transcendental to the disturbances. We don't pretend that disturbances aren't there. We're not like childish. We don't pretend that disturbances aren't there, but we're not disturbed by them. We're transcendental. Transcendental means, okay, means that the different disturbances of the material context, that they don't interfere with my living my life purpose with full enthusiasm. In fact, each disturbance is an impetus. Each disturbance is an impetus to deepen my enthusiasm. Punana eva makritam vibhagam vibhagya vapurvir vidadana namaste jivete yo mukti padesa dayavak. That this describes this consciousness of enlightenment, one who responds to the disturbances and so-called misfortunes of life with a spirit of deep enthusiasm to serve God with love and devotion. That's liberation. That's liberation from the ropes that bind us from the three modes, the three gunas of material nature. That we see just like, okay, let's say if someone's in prison, so this prison is a disturbing situation, right? Like we're not free to eat when we want, to dance when we want. We're, it's a very, so we can respond to the disturbances by like, yes, okay, yeah, let me actually serve my best interest and become a law-abiding citizen, and then I'm free to contribute to society. I'm free to take vacations when I want. So similarly, this material world is called Durga. Durga means prison house. Durga is a demigoddess who's like the warden of the prison house. She's a great devotee of Krishna. Tamaham bhajami. She's serving Krishna, just like the director of the university system is dear to the government, and so is the director of the prison system. The director of the prison system has a particularly thankless task. The director of the prison system, he or she is dealing with the criminal element, and the director of the university system is dealing with the scholars, but they're both servants of the government. So the idea of the field is, let me respond to the field with enthusiasm for devotion to God, and then I'm no longer forced to take birth in this field again. Ihayasya haryadasya karmanamanasagiran kilsvapyavasta sujivan mukta sauchyate. Within this very body, we can experience liberation by using the body, using the mind, using resources in the service of God, in the service of Krishna, and that's liberation. It's not some false escapism philosophy. So then Krishna, and Prabhupada really points this out, that Krishna, who's the authority of authorities, in his literary incarnation as Vyasadeva, he compiled the Vedas, Vedanta Krit Veda Vacham, Vedesh Dasaver Hameva Vedya. So Krishna is citing authority, he's citing the sages, he's citing the Vedanta Sutra, Tatsaradan Muneo, Ganavairaga Yuktaya Pachantya Manichatmanu Bhakti Shrutagritaya. The humble student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth, realizes super soul, realizes liberation from the material context to performing devotional service according to what's given in the Vedas. Shruti Smriti Puranani Pancharatra Vidim Vida Akantiki Hare Bhakti Utpataya Vikapate, which means that we have these realized pure devotees of God giving us guidance how to do devotional service. If we endeavor to do, well, I'm going to do it in my own way, then we'll tend to create a disturbance for ourselves or others. It becomes a farce in the name of spiritual life, in the name of devotional service. So you say, well, oh, but that's repressive. It's not. This is all about, yes. We, just like, okay, if someone wants to become an expert singer or a guitar player or athlete or physicist, we naturally learn from someone who's a master singer or guitar player or physician or physicist, right? And then as we learn, then we find our own voice. Someone learns tennis. I remember I remember seeing in the 1970s, Bjorn Borg played tennis. So he was a Swedish champion tennis player. And I was learning tennis, and beforehand you do the backswing and then hit the ball a little bit in front of you and your left foot, and there's all these rules that you follow. And I would watch Bjorn Borg on TV, and he had way too much topspin. He had too much topspin on his forehand and backhand. He didn't know how to do it. But he won like Wimbledon 5 times and the French Open 6 times. So, okay, meaning he did know how to do it. Okay, so he learned the basics, and he mastered the basics, and on that platform, he naturally developed his own style. Now, if we try to so-called find our voice, whether it's in bhakti yoga or playing piano too quick, it just becomes a disturbance. It interferes with us. So this process of bhakti yoga, yes, we naturally follow master bhakti yogis like Srila Prabhupada, Srila Rupa Goswami, Arjuna, and then naturally our personal distinctive seed of devotion sprouts and expands in most beautiful ways. This is all about revealing and uncovering our original spiritual personality with bliss, devotion, and personality. Okay, so Krishna's citing authority. So from authority, we can hear, we're not the body, we're spirit soul. And there's super soul, and there's Bhagavan, and here's what the material context is about. We hear from authority and we get it. And that's a very efficient way to learn. At the same time, we're invited to apply our intelligence, apply our senses for confirmation, just like the distinction between the soul and the body described right at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. So we could say, Bhagavad Gita says it, I accept it. At the same time, we're not encouraged to blindly follow. We can see that Bhagavad Gita is encouraging to apply your logic. Look, we've all experienced. The body changes, yet there's some constant identity that I call David. The body changes, but there's some constant identity. And this is universal, non-sectarian knowledge. Right? Whether someone says, I'm a Muslim though, I'm an atheist, I'm black, I'm white, I'm Chinese, but I'm female, I'm male, whatever. The body changes and the identity stays constant. That's evidence for what's given in the Vedas. So the most sublime source of epistemology, of knowledge, is hearing from the realized source of knowledge. Such hearing, the vibration itself coming from those realized source, is identical with the truth that the vibration conveys. And at the same time, we're invited to apply our logic, apply our empirical methods to supplement and complement. Our logic and empirical methods, being born of the human context, never supplants or supersedes Shabda Brahman, knowledge coming from realized authorities at the same time. It can supplant that. Okay, so now I've spoken a bit about aspects of the verse, and just in closing, there's this whole kind of final paragraph, which is so fascinating to be a few courses in itself, where Prabhupada talks about Anamoy, Pranamoy, Gyanamoy, Vigyanmoy, and Anandamoy, different levels of consciousness. There aren't too many places in Prabhupada's teachings where he goes back to this. It's right here in the 13th chapter of Purport. And the idea is that in those lower three modes of consciousness, the spirit soul, that's us, is in forgetfulness of their connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We are always connected with God, because I feel disconnected from God, and that could be true. We're always connected with God, and we tend to forget that we're connected, but we're always connected. Just like a child is always connected with the parent, a child might forget that they're connected. The parent, at least in the analogy, never forgets. The parent always has that loving, caring, protective, like that attitude towards the child. But the child might just completely be in forgetfulness and living their life in some reckless way or something like that. So in these lower stages, anamoy, realization of God's energies through food. So the idea is, it's just the lower stages, it's complete absorption in material context, mostly alienation from self-realization. Almost no, it's like if we look at animal or plant life, there's like the self turning towards itself in self-realization. There's no questioning, what's the purpose of my life? What happens at the time of death? Is there a boss of the boss of the boss? Is there God? What am I avoiding? What am I pretending not to know? What's the distinction between spirit and matter? Right? So in these lower forms of life, there's never that question. And so that's unfortunately true with most human beings. It's dvipadapashu, it's like two-legged animal life. And then in these higher stages, there's increasing self turning towards the super soul and transcending the disturbances of the material context. So these stages, we often refer to these in regards to the importance of meeting ourselves where we're at. Meeting ourselves where we're at, meeting others where they're at. An example I give, some of you are familiar with the Safatov courses. So the first Safatov foundational seminar I conducted in North Florida was in late summer, early autumn, 1999. And I was conducting it, and this was before we were using the name Safatov, and it was an abbreviated version of the course. I was conducting it in 2.5-hour sessions in every Tuesday at the Krishna Community Center on New Ramanreddy property. And there was one fellow in the course, a senior devotee, very, very fine devotee and gentleman. And and he, for like decades, he would go and share Krishna consciousness. He would call it preaching. And he would go to I think now it's called the Krishna House in Gainesville. And he would preach. So he came, it was like the second or third Tuesday of our course. He came and he said, he shared, he was really beaming, he was radiating. He said, yes, something amazing happened. I want to tell you, share, what happened? So he said that he was speaking to the students, and there was one like young woman, like 18, 19 years old, there at Sunday feast program or some program. And he said that he thought, well, these things that we're learning in the transformative communication course, I have an idea. Why don't I actually try them? So yeah, it was a stunning realization. And so, and this was in 1999. And so this young woman, and she was talking about like struggles with her boyfriend, and she was scared that her parents would stop funding her degree because she wasn't getting good grades and she didn't like her major, like that. So typically, he would take Bhagavad Gita and he would thump her on the head with it. He would thump her on the head with it, figuratively, and like that. And he would say, yes, well, that's because you're a karmi, and that's like he would preach to her, and he had 28 years of experience of that sort of sharing. And then he said, let me try it. So he entered her world, and he said, I hear you're really feeling a lot of anxiety that your parents might not fund your education anymore, and you're feeling a lot of hurt about that you're feeling jealous of your partner, and you're feeling a lot of hurt. You're not even sure you're going to pay the rent. It's causing a lot of strain for you. And then he shared in the class. He shared then something amazing happened that never happened before. He said she became interested in what I had to say, and it was like, and that's never happened before. And then she became interested in the philosophy, and then he shared. Then she started practicing Bhakti Yoga and chanting Hare Krishna. So the idea is, let's say, I don't know her exactly, but she was in maybe some form of the anamoya or pranamoya stage. Like, what about my money? What about my romantic life? What about my social life? What about my career? Like anamoya, pranamoya, like that. And we meet ourselves where we're at. Otherwise, in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna warns. He says, Arjuna, what can repression accomplish? Don't be a pretender. Now, we meet ourselves where we're at. And when the spirit soul, when the knower of the field is understood and received by ourselves or others, what happens is that growth naturally happens. Just like we don't even need to try to grow. And what does growth mean? It means the soul grows in realization that it's a soul. The driver of the car realizes it's the driver of the car. And we grow towards coming out of forgetfulness of who we are as servants of Krishna, the super soul. So this meeting ourselves where we're at, it's not just about feel your feelings. Yeah, experience our experience in the context of living purposefully, living for self-realization and for expanding and deepening our inspiration for devotional service. And so, that's what Krishna is doing, Arjuna here. Yeah, so this openness, empathy, these are natural qualities of the soul, and we naturally utilize openness and empathy, not necessarily as the goal in itself, to support ourselves and others to move towards that which is objectively good and that which is objectively true. Sometimes in the name of openness, there's a conception that there's no absolute. No, just a simple example we often use. Just like, because I was open in first grade, I think if we can, because I was open in first grade, then I heard from my teacher, Mrs. Gerbard, that 3 + 3 is 6. Now someone can say, David, that means you're closed-minded. I'm not closed-minded. I used my openness to come to objective truth. 3 + 3 is 6. And actually, I continued to be open. And if you present me evidence that 3 + 3 is not 6, I'm open to it. So So openness as an instrumental virtue, empathy as an instrumental quality to inspire each other towards that which is objectively beautiful, good, and true. Okay, I'll read the verse and let's hear some comments and realizations, and maybe there are some questions. Rishi bir bahuda gitam chando bir vividai prita Brahma sutra padaischaiva hitumad bir vinishchitai. That knowledge of the field of activities and of the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings, especially in the Vedanta Sutra, and is presented with all reasoning as to cause and effect. Hare Krishna, thank you all for your presence. Thanks for listening. I welcome if there's any questions or comments or realizations.
Daru, you had raised your hand. You could I can unmute you.
Uh-oh.
Hello, Dhira.
Uh-oh. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, the question was, you were talking about testing the person, something about, gosh, the person he wanted to see. I thought you were going to give him a whole course on how to test him. Let me make a course on how to test him. And then I got confused, but did you do some certain course on the guy, or you just, you know what I'm talking about, where I'm even coming from? It was about the person, whether, oh my God.
I'm not so clear on what you want to communicate.
Yeah, I am not either. Forget it. Thanks, sorry about that. I'm sorry. Just go ahead.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Oh wait, so first I'll make a comment. If you're raising your hand electronically, type it in the chat instead, because I can't see the hands that are being raised. I believe. So my question, David, you said sometime at the beginning of class, to whatever extent we're focused on the material, that's worse than a waste of time, because then that's like we're degrading the soul. And I know also oftentimes you reference, there's the verse of there's no loss in diminution, whatever progress we make, we keep. How do these work together, that whatever progress we make in Krishna consciousness we keep, while simultaneously the concept of the soul being degraded? How do these two fit together?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Eze. Yeah. Okay, so like if in a given day, like these 4 hours, reasonably absorbed in Krishna consciousness since 5 a.m. Here we are discussing Bhagavad Gita. We chanted Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, sung devotional songs. All right, so that's for my eternal benefit. That's my eternal benefit. And then if I look at time yesterday, kind of just distracted on the internet. Okay, then that's an unfortunate waste of time. Yeah, I'm like here. Each of us, we're a glorious spirit soul. I mean, we're small and tiny and insignificant in a sense. Just like as an analogy, there's innumerable trillions of stars in the sky. You can tell each one's insignificant. At the same time, each lights the sky in its distinctive, unique way. Okay, and so so the spirit soul, it's alive, and it's blissful, and it's conscious and glorious in so many ways, radiant. And so trying to squeeze out some juice through dead matter, it's very degraded. It's very degraded. And so it's a sad waste of time, and I'm actually doing damage. But the damage is not eternal. The benefit is eternal. The benefit of engaging in bhakti yoga is eternal. any damage I do, it's not eternal. Even if I look at time I wasted yesterday or last week, or things I did that caused me shame because I'm deviant from the actual process of self-realization. Okay, then if I let myself experience the experience of that shame, of that self-disgust, of whatever, if I let myself experience that and be open to what's the message here, what's the message, and I let that move me to deeper intention, dritavrata, deeper staunch determination to live to live each moment urgently and meaningfully, then even that time wasted with entanglement in the material dullness, even that becomes valuable because I'm relating it to a way that's deepening my devotion. Okay, so the eternal benefit is eternal. At the same time, okay, the degradation, it's like we let the diamond of our consciousness become covered by dust or dirt or thick mud. Okay, and as thick as that is, and as terrible and disgusting, but that's temporary. That's temporary, and we can cleanse that in one moment. For most of us, it's more of a gradual process. So it is a waste of time, but the anartha, the weeds, they are not eternal. Whereas the benefit of anything, any moment, one Hare Krishna mantra, one name of God, that's for our eternal benefit. And even if we waste 10 years, okay, we can wake up from that and we can compensate for that, even in one moment. So the degradation, that's not eternal. That's just some flickering lightning flash in the eternal sky.
I have a comment about an analogy for your question.
Mm-hmm.
It's an analogy of a field that's very old and it's getting tilled. And then the farmer tills the field, but doesn't do anything with it. And then there is a crust that forms at the top of the field. And the farmer, when he decides, oh, I want to do something with my field, he goes back, and then there is that crust to break, but beneath that crust, there is the tilled fields that he tilled before. So, like that analogy, at every moment we have a choice to give to Krishna or not to give to Krishna. And then when we give to Krishna, we put dividends in our spiritual bank account. And when we don't give to Krishna, we may forget about that. I forget I have that bank account. And then I go about my life, and then I get covered over. But the moment I'm turning back to Krishna, that benefit, I'm remembering I have a bank account there. And whatever dividend is in that bank account, I get the benefit from it. And I know, like in our services, we encounter so many people. You know, it's beautiful in that sense. We encounter so many people. And when we see that people, all of a sudden, they were maybe, like really living a life based on increasing material happiness or, material comfort, material enjoyment. And all of a sudden, they get in contact with Krishna consciousness. And then they choose, oh, that sounds very good. And we can see some people, they go very quickly. They make very quick, like, understanding, advancement, all that, because they break that crust. And they are really going into the tender tilled field that's already there available for them when we come back to it. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, I like analogies, especially visual analogies, so I really appreciate the examples again. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, and thank you, Malini. Thank you, Malini, for those analogies, bank account and field. And Ramachandra.
Hare Krishna. I'm sort of, I wanted to share
my process. Like the last course moved me. It was like a shorter course than any of the other courses, the seminar, but it moved me much deeper and like far beyond what I expected, like far beyond the advanced course and the foundational course. I guess in a sense it was an extension.
Yeah.
That's why. And it put me in like a really deep questioning of where I'm at in not like, I will not even say Krishna consciousness, but in my life, because I feel that 8 years ago, I really like this analogy Mother Malini extrapolated from you with the field, or she gave that, the crust. Like I feel like 8 years ago, I came, I broke the crust of my, whatever spiritual life, whatever I've done in the previous life or in this life. And I start tilting again. And I feel now that the crust built again on top of my spiritual life as a spiritual life by itself. And I feel it's just so thick that I don't know if I can penetrate, and I don't know if I have like the desire really to penetrate, because I do feel that I'm attracted to Krishna, but not as much to like be like to live like as a pure devotee unattached to the material world. And at the same time, I don't relate anymore to what I was doing 8 years ago, like the tattoos, the artwork, like my own heritage that is not even my heritage. I immigrated to Israel and I detached myself from that. So I don't really know who I am materially, and neither I find enough encouragement to come to like a state of like very elevated state of Krishna consciousness. And just the crust is building in my heart, and
You're feeling somewhat like the riven cloud that Arjuna
yes,
described.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I wrote down before.
Riven cloud. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just in the questioning of where to place myself, where to rearrange myself in this lifetime, so I just don't go crazy from chanting. Literally like that.
Hey, here, yeah, okay. In this discussion, the past 4 days, you were in an intensive online seminar, and you can see it like naturally built on the foundational and advanced seminar experiences. In a sense, it was even more intense and shattering and shaking for you.
Yeah.
And you kind of know that that's healthy. It's like moving you to realness and reality. At the same time, it's like you're in a very unsettled place, and you don't know where your solid foundations are.
Yes, I feel like yesterday on the Kadashi, I tried to do 64 rounds, and after doing half, I did one more round, and I felt, okay, I'm just gonna go. I don't know what's gonna happen to my brain if I chant one more round. And I chanted one more round, and I just stopped. So I really I'm like fearing that I'm just gonna go crazy.
You're feeling fear, even terrified that like your mind will go to pieces. Like if you can try to take shelter and immersion in bhakti yoga process, which you did 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And you did, and you reawakened your relationship with Krishna and like that from previous lives or whatever. At the same time, you built different layers of spiritual masks.
Yes.
You built
Bypassing.
spiritual bypass, artificial transcendence, and now you're piercing through that. And that's, in a sense, it's liberating from illusion. And also it's true, you're not sure where you stand. And that's scary. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Ramachandra. Thanks for your vulnerable sharing.
I like to add to the analogy.
Yes, Malini.
I think part of the analogy is like when we start turning back to Krishna, we break the crust. And then we get the benefit that we accumulated that the field is soft and it looks like I can plant a lot there. And at one point or another, there is a time in spiritual life when we kind of reach the end of the soft ground that was there already, and when we need to dig a lot harder in order to continue to make advancement. So, and that can be really disorienting, because it seems like at the beginning it goes so quickly and it's so easy and so fun. And then when we hit that hard surface again, then the work is very different and a lot more difficult. And that's where the test of our sincerity is coming up.
Thanks for that expansion on the field analogy. I find it very relevant for me. I definitely relate to that. If I look at my 40 years or so attempting to practice that, at first I'm like, oh, this is easy to dig 6 inches a foot. And then at some point, we need to really apply strenuous effort to get to the harder ground. Yes. Thanks for that, Malini. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Bhakta George.
Hare Krishna, David. Thank you for our program. I want to just share some appreciation about your idea that listening with an open mind from a place that is connected with life purpose. I feel like that is so important. So often in my personal life, I'm trying to figure out what adjustments I want to make, because I came into Krishna consciousness, like I'm 34 now, so I came into Krishna consciousness later, I guess. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do I make the necessary adjustments to allow for deepening my devotion. And just my recent experience has been to just listen, like really try and listen with an open mind, ask for what I want, ask for that, like, please Krishna, help me make the adjustments, and trying to keep in life purpose. Because like with my daughter now, when I was her age, I was in a third world country and I didn't speak any English. So, adjustments kind of that my parents made in my life was that they taught me English, and now I get to read Prabhupada. I get to read, like, I have this knowledge, and at the same time, other things, endeavors that I've done in my life, like 7 years ago, I got a doctorate in dental medicine from the University of Pennsylvania, and that endeavor in education has led to a lot of misery, I guess, and I could take it or leave it, I guess, the results of it. And so when I try to make these adjustments, when I experience some uncertainty, lack of clarity in what my path for Sarasvati also looks like, it's like, I guess I want her to be educated, because like to some degree, I feel like I have some responsibility, because I want her to read Prabhupada. So if she just works on the farm or something, I don't know, maybe she will not be able to read Prabhupada, and that will not help her. But then it's like, if I move to a different part of the world, or I try to aim for this level of education or that, like, oh, Germany has a great education system, but like, what does education mean? I see Bharat and Ananta, and I value so much their emphasis on, and their boys, like, oh my gosh, they're so young and they're so all about Krishna, like yeah, let's do that education. So I don't know, I'm just appreciating your emphasis on listening with an open mind and trying to surrender as much from a place of life purpose, and letting Krishna, like, seeing how he's facilitating with me, like having just that moment of stepping back and just and asking and trying to receive, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, George. inspired by your sharing. I see you, George. I'm experiencing you as clear. I experience you as clear in your principles, and in many ways not clear on how to apply them. And I'm hearing that yes, okay, that like for the principle of yukta vairagya, which means to utilize everything in the service of self-realization and Krishna consciousness. So you're looking at something like, okay, your parents arranged for you to learn English. So that's something from your past that you're so appreciative of, because then you get to read Prabhupada's books. And then you're looking at, okay, also something from your past you got from before you came to Krishna consciousness, was you got a doctorate in dental medicine from the University of Pennsylvania, and right there in West Philadelphia. And so then you, yes, and then you're looking at, okay, is that something from my past to leave behind, like, like excess baggage? Or is that something to use? You're looking at, you have a daughter now, so you know you want her to be educated primarily, essentially, with spiritual principles, Krishna consciousness, self-realization at the core. Okay, what's that mean? Does it mean that you completely isolate her from any material education system? Or does it mean that you go to rural community living and homeschool? Does it mean that you're not, there's so many options. And I'm hearing that you're appreciating that principle of open-mindedness. And with an open mind, you're endeavoring to have a clean reception, to hear from Krishna, to get realization and revelation when you chant japa, or when you read sentences in Prabhupada's books, open for guidance to how to apply these principles, to apply them in your life in a way that's distinctive and creative, and that's moving you and your daughter and others towards increased realization of the absolute.
Yes, thank you, David. I feel heard.
Thank you, George. Prahlad.
Yeah, so my question is, you spoke about like trying to be open-minded and then also see, you know, objective truth. And, you know, in terms of trying to see what objective truths are, yes, like say 2 plus 2 is 4. And part of that is like, you know, pratyaksha, it's like what we observe, and therefore we know it to be true because we have experience of it. And so how do we know something to be an objective truth? Is it just based upon our experience? In the sense that, like, so we have Shabda Pramana, and then, you know, the scriptures, what we hear from the scriptures, and then we interpret the language in a way that we can comprehend, you know, based upon our understanding of the language. And then we, you know, believe, okay, this is true, and then we try to apply it in our life. So I guess my question is, do we know something to be an objective truth because, like, say we interpret the Shastra in a certain way and we apply it, and then we get a result that we, you know, deem as positive?
Thanks, I appreciate your intelligent question, Prahlad. So you say, okay, like, yeah, with 2 plus 2 is 4. Well, yeah, we can experience, we can have pratyaksha, take 2 things and another 2 things, they become 4 things. Okay, but how does that apply to these principles, these assertions of Bhagavad Gita? I'm going to say it's the same process. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, pratyaksha vagamam dharmyam shushukam kartumaviyam. Now, when Krishna says pratyaksha there, my understanding is he's not speaking about, because he's not speaking about like the material tactile sense or the material visual or the material olfactory sense. Because even if we think like, oh, I have objective truth because I see it, you know, but we know, a personal experience I have from my undergrad days at Penn State University in 1979 or so. I was in a cognitive behavioral psychology class, and in one of the classes, the professor, he showed a movie. Maybe it was about a 2-minute movie, and it was staged with actors, and it was kind of like 1920s, and it was a street in a city, with like vehicles from the 1920s, and there were people dressed in the fashion of the time, and then there was a robbery. And, okay, so it was like a 2-minute staged movie, and then afterwards he gave a questionnaire. Maybe it was 25 questions and the question would state things like, the robber held the gun in his right hand. True, false? I'm not sure. And then if we wrote true or false, there was another question: would you be willing to testify to that in court? Okay. All right. So anyhow, there was like 40 of us in the class, and afterwards we went over the answers, and everyone in the class, myself included, was willing to testify to at least one lie in court. Everyone in the class was willing to because we could say, well, okay, because we know objective truth, because we see it, but seeing is very faulty. It's viprolipsa, we have limitations, cheating mentality, illusions, and mistakes. So even that so-called objective truth through material pratyaksha, it's a very faulty, it doesn't mean it's useless, but it has shortcomings as an epistemology. So when Krishna says pratyaksha bhagavamam dharmyan, he's speaking about the absolute senses of the soul. The absolute senses of the soul. So we hear from Shabda Brahman, we hear from realized authority, and that is objective truth. Now we might have varying degrees of trust in that, depending on our evolution, but we hear from Shabda Brahman, and that is objective, absolute truth. And we might have varying degrees of trust. And that's why we're not saying like you just need to blindly follow. No, we're encouraged to do the science of self-realization. We practice that. We're encouraged to have enough respect for the process, enough trust for the process, enough faith to let me try the process. Just like we might have enough trust in a degree, in a PhD program. Well, I can't say objectively it's a great program, but I have enough trust. I'm going to invest my money here. So let me invest some time. And we invest some time, and then we invest some time in the process of bhakti yoga. Then, because the self is made of chit potency, the self is made of realized knowledge. It's also made of bliss. And then the self turns towards itself in self-realization, and we have an objective, undeniable experience of ourself as spirit soul. As a material analogy, let's say if we eat a full meal, an extra full meal, the tummy is full, and someone can say, well, can you prove it? It's like, I don't need proof. I know that I'm full. So we practice this process, which we get from Shabda Brahman. And in practicing, it's natural. We might have doubts, we might have mistrust, but we have enough respect for it. Let me try it. And then the self experiences itself as a spiritual self, as a spiritual being. We're built to directly spiritually experience. And then as we practice the process, the self has more and more spiritual pratyaksha, not material. Material pratyaksha is faulty. It's not useless, but it's faulty, has shortcomings. Spiritual pratyaksha is perfect and complete. And then we have direct experience of all the objective truths that are being revealed from Shabda Brahman. Hare Krishna.
I have one more. Are we out of time? Because I
Yeah.
have something just like further
Yeah,
question.
your voice is a little muffled, but I'm eager to hear your next question.
Okay, so it sounds like what you were saying was like we have to experience it. There's some experience, like we apply the process, and then, you know, we experience the bliss, or we experience happiness, or something, you know, through our experience, we know that what we're doing is the right thing, or maybe the correct application of the scriptures. And I guess the question I have is, like, how do we distinguish, like, what is actual spiritual bliss and what might be something else? Like, one devotee, when I was living in Mayapur, he gave the example that, like, you know, sometimes you might be in kirtan and you're jumping up and down and dancing, and then you think like, oh, I'm experiencing ecstasy. And what he was saying is like, well, yes, maybe you are, but maybe it's also just you're getting endorphins as you're jumping up and down the music. And, you know, so don't think you're necessarily like a pure devotee just because you might have like some happiness. And part of it might be spiritual, but part of it also might be physical. And then, and then further, it's like we see different devotees, and they have like they read the same books, they read the same scriptures, but they come to what seems like very different conclusions. Like, you know, I've seen, say, Hridayananda Maharaj and Bhaktivedanta Purnaswami, they have like, it seems to me, very different applications of the scriptures. So how do we know, like, when our experience is like maybe more a spiritual pratyaksha, and how do we understand like which interpretation to try to apply? Is it just based on our experience? Because I've had times where like I'm experiencing something and it seems to be true because I feel good about it, but then later down the road there's the negative result from that. And so then, like you were saying, there's limitations to pratyaksha, because it's like, oh, I thought it was good, it felt good at the time, but then after some time there was some limitation, so yeah.
Thank you, Prahlad. Yeah, I mean, for you, you know, your comments and questions there, for me, they relate to the first thing we stated in the class about the importance to make distinctions. And just like Bhagavad Gita talks about happiness in the mode of ignorance. My bliss is to sleep for 12 hours. That's my bliss. Okay, and that might be true. I might get some, it's not real, it's not happiness for the soul, but there's a sort of happiness in the mode of ignorance. Yeah, my happiness is when people adore me. My happiness is enjoying sex life or whatever. Okay, so there's happiness in the different modes. And so it means like, it's our responsibility, or at least our opportunity, if we want to progress, to make distinctions and to notice in myself and in my perceptions of others, okay, yeah, so this seems like a sort of fulfillment, a sort of happiness, and we want to cultivate expertise in making the distinctions. Is this in tamas, rajas, sattva, transcendence? And so that's where our sincerity and spiritual intelligence are vital to come into play. And that's the same point, to cultivate our intelligence is razor sharp, to make distinctions that, okay, what's being presented here by my own mind or by someone else, this is a deviation from the truth that's coming from Shabda Brahman. Now, what's being presented here, wow, that's a very enriching perspective. It's not my perspective. At the same time, I can appreciate that's a perspective that's fully aligned with the principles that we get from Srila Prabhupada. And I'm enriched by that perspective. I've never considered it. Now, here's another perspective, and that's not just like an enriching perspective on the principles we get from the Vedas. That's deviant. That's a deviant perspective. So in order to progress, in order to protect ourselves, it's important that we're steadily, constantly reading Prabhupada's books to sharpen our philosophical intelligence and to cultivate in more and more realization. And to whatever extent we think like, well, I'm not capable to make those distinctions. then kind of related to what like George was sharing, then let's be sincere. Tesham satata yuksanam brajatam pritipurvakam tadami buddhugam tam yenamamu piyantite. Krishna says that even when our intelligence is lacking in making distinctions, which is perhaps most of the time, Krishna will give us intelligence where to take shelter, where to take shelter. Prahlad, I appreciate very much your comments and I appreciate this discussion. Hare Krishna, thank you everyone. Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bo. Thank you. Jai. Hare Bo.